Chapter 1 The Golden Aerial Tram. For as long as I can remember, I've been asked questions too insoluble to answer. Before I could speak, Pop would be shouting to me in a drunken rant about his discordant views on Thomas Edison. He would ask me strange questions in a language I did not yet understand. That's always the case being around a man with an intellect such as his. No matter how many steps ahead you thought you may be, he'd always be waiting for you at the finish line. Pop adopted all of us. We were called the Exquisites. Each of us from a different quadrant reserve. He saved us from she. She's the one who started all of this. All of it. And she pinned it on one of... Pop would say goodnight to us in our own native language, but each night he rotated language and child until we understood all 5 variations. I was the first to be found, so Pop pushed me harder than the others. They all thought I wanted to be the best, but I just wanted to be their brother. But Pop wanted me to be the best. So that's what I became. I only pushed to finish first in hopes that it would grant me the time to spend with my siblings. But I was wrong. And now, I am the last. At some undefinable point in time, the questions ceased to be insoluble. The equations became English. The conundrums were jokes with unprovided punchlines. And then all the questions started coming from me and not towards me. No matter how many questions I answered, no matter how many I asked, the question always left unanswered by any of us was the secret behind the Abeth principle. Abeth is an acronym. It stands for Absolute Balance of Electronic Telekinetic Hyperlinks. It was Pop's legacy, a way of putting all the worries of overpopulation and limited resources to rest. He spent more than his life searching for the missing pieces of Abeth. He spent our lives making a search with him. Lately, I seem to be searching less for the world's secrets of most significance and searching for Pop. It's been 12 years since the first funeral. I left home after the 3rd, and I vowed never to return to help him in his work again. Today, I broke that vow. I regretfully returned in hopes to find Pop. But what I found was much more grim and ghastly than I could have ever imagined. I arrived at Pop's manor at approximately 12:34 p.m. I carried nothing but a jacket on my arm, as I knew my visit would indeed be a short one. The humming motor of the taxi that brought me here, combined with the trauma that I saw before me, put me in a hypnotic state of paralysis. I stood there, frozen and terrified, until my taxi driver shouted,
"Hey kid, meter's running. You either get in the house or get back in the cab. Choice is yours."
I turned to him, digging in my pocket. I bent down to the sweaty, ill-groomed man peering at me through the open window and flashed him an already written check for an obscene amount of money. "Here's more than enough for the cab, with some in change. I recommend you wait here patiently or get out of my car. Choice is yours." I may have a bit of an anger problem. That tends to be the case with men burdened by intellect. If only they knew what I did, they too would be angry at the world, stuck in a mental loop of ifs and whens. I envy those blissfully unaware of what's going to happen. I keep a few check stuffed throughout the pockets of my wardrobe because people always prefer money over knowledge. I just happen to have an abundance of both. I walked up the extravagant exterior steps that led to the Gothic front door designed to intimidate visitors. After several deep breaths, I pulled the carillon cord in a manner ever so hesitant. Pop-Pop's favorite measure of Requiem K626 Lacrimosa rang not only within the manor, but throughout the whole grounds of the estate. As each chime struck, I could feel the cold wave of panic flush down my body, weighing my feet firmly on weak knees. All I could do was wait, and I waited, for what felt like hours. I waited until the taxi man behind me fell asleep with his hat covering his early signs of cataract eyes. I waited until my anxiety turned into irritation. I had waited for so many years for this man to come knocking on my door, and now that I was knocking on his, I had finally grown tired of waiting. Not to worry, there's a spare key in the garden. In between the pansies and impatiens resided a Thomas Edison gnome that held a spare key in its head. Pop-Pop wasn't just smart, he was clever. I went to open the poor inventor's head, but to my surprise, the key held within was not the one I was expecting. Rather than the copper-colored key I had used hundreds of times before, the key in front of me was almost transparent. It seemed to be made from a strong form of aerogel. I knew it was unlikely to be for the front door, so I decided to sleuth around the property for other differences that may be. A mourning dove's coo drew my attention to a splintery shed blanketed with shrubbery. Never in my life had I seen anyone go into that shed. It sat in the background of our lives, a patient observer with the fortitude to outlive us all, as fundamental to the household as we were, and equally as forgotten. On the door of the shed was a padlock, as plain as a slice of bread. Rust firmly dusted every crevice except for one spot, the keyhole. I felt the teeth scrape along the tumblers of the lock with an eerie ease that demanded I press onward. I opened the rotted wood door falsely protecting the secrets in the shed and made my way down the dark and dirty staircase. In my jacket pocket was a war-era Zippo lighter given to me by Pop-Pop the day before I left. It is the only reminder of him that I couldn't burn, and is now my only friend in this journey I've found myself in. Already on edge, my foot was hooked by something I swore at the time was a metallic tentacle. When I hit the ground, my only companion flew from my hand and slid across the floor, but did not extinguish. Peeking through the dimly lit ambience of the frightened-looking fire was the seductive shine of polished gold. I got up and brushed off the dust that had a scent strongly reminiscent of old library books, and hastily grabbed the lighter before the fire grew more courageous. I angled the lighter back to its normal position, and the flame became bold and bright. As I did, the stunning reflection coming from the gold beams on a beautifully designed unknown vehicle forced my eyes to dilate and squint in an involuntary self-defense. The mesmerizing golden glow came from some kind of self-suspending aerial tramway. My curiosity has always been my worst enemy. Pop would say, "Curiosity killed the cat, you know." In response, I would say, "It may have killed him, but he had a hell of a good time." A good time. That was always the contrast between the two of us. I just wanted to have a good time. With him. And my siblings. But I fear now my curiosity may have gotten the best of me. I entered the aerial tram no later than 2 o'clock. I don't remember the journey, nor do I remember the destination. I remember the floor, and how durable it was compared to my skull. How long have I been waiting in this endlessly foggy and dolent atmosphere? I do not know. When I walked in the aerial tram, some kind of steam or smoke emitted from the ceiling. I was asleep when I arrived, and I woke up with a headache rivaling a lobotomy. I've been waiting here for an unknown amount of time in an unknown place of being. The hands on my watch spin at inconsistent speeds, and the sun is moving slower than its usual orbit pattern would imply. I'm scribbling this in my pocket calendar in hopes to pass the time, or that someone will find this and send help. The probability of the aerial tram taking me somewhere else decreases with each minute that passes, inconsistent or not. Do I stay here, where it's safe, where someone can find me, or do I give in to my curiosity one last time in hopes of something better? My name is Charlie Rockwell, and I am running out of options. Please, send help. Is that music? Where could music even be coming from? I begin blindly running along the thin catwalk in a foggy void towards a greater perhaps. I hear waves of laughter from adults and children. I must be getting close to something. I can't see more than 2 feet in front of me. Where am I? In my blind sprint towards each next step, the catwalk disappears from beneath my feet. I unshielded my eyes from an appalling fall to a beamish city in the sky. What was holding me from an agonizing demise that granted me a sight so significant and sumptuous? I struggled to turn back and see the reason for my rescue. My collar was being grabbed by a mysterious white-gloved figure. They held me there intentionally long enough for me to admire and appreciate the arcane beauty so magnificent it would drive most men to madness.